and joining us over the phone is our good buddy, Buster Olney. Buster, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy opening day to you.
Happy opening day right back at you. You know, we had you on for a little bit when Cabrera signed, and I really want to get into it because I've been reading up on the contract, and we all know, nobody's denying that he's one of the greatest hitters that we'll ever see. But they didn't have to give him this contract, at least for another year. He wanted to stay in Detroit. It doesn't make any sense to me why they would extend him to the age of 40. Have you been able to come up with anything, Buster?
No. Well, I know David Dombrowski, when he spoke with Jason Stark last week, you know, his explanation was, hey, this is one of the greatest hitters of all time. This is Hank Aaron. This is Willie Mays. And you're right to point out that, you know, no one is begrudging Miguel Cabrera or saying he's anything less than a star. And you always hear from people he's the best hitter in baseball. But I've never heard more executives from other teams go more nuts over a contract than this one because, A, to your point, they couldn't figure out why they did the contract now. He's not a free agent until 2 more seasons pass. You know, given the inherent risk, some executives are pointing out you could have waited till after the season was over, maybe sign him next spring to see if he holds up because he's a big guy. He's probably a little heavier than they'd like him to be. And, you know, why embrace that? The second thing that I heard from executives, why not pay him really, really, really well for like a 3-year extension beyond the 2 years remaining? As one GM said to me, heck, I'd pay him $45 million a year for 3 years, but I'm not going to go and extend him for 10 years. And then the third thing that everyone pointed out was Miguel Cabrera is destined at some point to be a designated hitter. And we just saw David Ortiz sign a $16 million extension and to be the highest paid DH. And the Tigers just gave him essentially twice that. And for all those reasons, the industry absolutely did not understand what the Tigers were thinking.
But is it possible, Buster, because the money is really exploding and baseball teams are actually spending a lesser percentage on players than they ever did 10 years ago, that we may look in 2016 and 2017 and say, boy, Cabrera's a bargain?
I don't think we will because those 10-year deals for guys who are, you know, over 30 years old, and Miguel Cabrera turns 31 in 2 weeks, I believe, 2.5 weeks. You know, that was, I think, part of the reason why people scratch their head. Look, you know, it's one thing to invest in a 22-year-old Mike Trout. It's one thing to invest in a 25-year-old Tanaka. You know, guys who are younger with a lot of years ahead of them. But generally speaking, most of the general managers, team presidents, have looked at those long-term deals for guys like Alex Rodriguez when he signed it, and other players at that age, and say, look, it's just too much risk, and we have too much evidence that it's not going to work out. And as, you know, great a hitter as he is, at some point they're going to be overpaying him beyond what his market value is.
Now, I'm not sure of the timeline. Maybe you have it laid out, Buster, but the Cabrera thing gets announced, and then a couple of days later, the Trout contract gets announced. And I know Trout can't be a free agent for a while, but he almost seems like he's a bargain at those numbers. Was that contract signed and sealed and delivered before they did the Cabrera thing?
They were well down the road. A couple weeks before that, I had talked to someone who would knowledge the contract who said that he thought it would wind up at 6 for 148. So they were pretty much down the road, and it is a little bit oil and water, the two situations in terms of whether or not they're comparable, because they are apples and oranges because of the service time. You know, Miguel Cabrera's got a lot more than Mike Trout does, who's not even eligible for arbitration yet. But it's interesting you say about, you know, being a relative bargain. I will tell you, I've talked to agents and I've talked to general managers, I've talked to some players who say that if they had been in Trout's shoes, and no one was really criticizing Trout because his decision was sound, given his interests, and I've talked to friends of his who are convinced that at some point he wants to see if it's possible that he could play on the East Coast, maybe for the Yankees, maybe for the Phillies, if things aren't going well with the Angels. And you know, that's his prerogative. But the feeling of some of the agents and general managers and other players is, look, he had the leverage to get a $300 million deal, to get a $350 million deal, and the Angels definitely wanted to go more than 6 years. And I tend to be more of a bird in the hand type person, so you know, if he could have gotten like a 10, 12-year, $350 million deal now, hey, why not grab it? I mean, why embrace the uncertainty?
Buster Nunez designated for assignment. How did he fall out of favor with the Yankees so quickly?
His on-base percentage. Last year when they were trying to find solutions in the infield, I know in the media there certainly was a lot of talk of, well, let Nunez do it. He never really has been a really good on-base percentage guy. And, for the last 20 years, the Yankees have built their teams on base percentage. And that's why I always thought that he was kind of a duck out of water within the Yankees organization, because he didn't really do this sort of things that are valued, especially in the American League East.
But if you think about that, they should have noticed that a long time ago, and they could have won 2 World Series in a row, because that was the one thing standing between them getting Cliff Lee. And if they had gotten Cliff Lee at the end of that year, maybe they convinced him to sign a long-term deal.
Your point is well taken, no question about it.
Now, Buster, you did the Dodger-Padre game. Do you think that the Kershaw injury is more serious than they're letting on?
Yes.
Really? Wow.
I did a thing yesterday. When I walked away from after talking with people, first off, they don't know when he's going to be back. It's uncertain. It's completely indefinite. He has the same type of injury that Jurickson Profar has with a muscle in the back of his shoulder. And Andrew Kashner had that injury with the Padres 2 years ago, and he missed 2 months. Jurickson Profar is going to miss, about 3 months. They're expected him to miss. Kershaw, no question about it, the uncertainty of it is driving him crazy. And when we talked with Don Mattingly before the game on Sunday, he made it very clear they want to make sure that he gets that injury right before they put him back on the mound.